Hi, and welcome to Orygen Digital's MOST Platform training. MOST stands for Moderated Online Social Therapy. This is Module 4, Allocation to a Medicare Clinician and Discharge Planning. Today we'll cover the handover process, different levels of usage, and discharge planning. Let's start with the handover process. Jordan is a first-year uni student who is living alone and has been on the waitlist to see a Medicare clinician at his local headspace centre for help with low mood and anxiety. He's been on the waitlist now for 3 months. Jordan found out about MOST when he had his first session with a Headspace Access clinician. While he's been waiting for face-to-face therapy at Headspace, he's been getting support from the MOST team. This has included support via the MOST Platform's community. Jordan has been checking out the posts on the community feed, and he's been able to connect with other young people who are experiencing similar problems and also share his interests. He's also been connecting with his MOST therapist. Jordan has been receiving a check-in call every 3 weeks from a MOST therapist who has helped him work through the Feeling Down guided journey on the platform. He's finding mindfulness and behavioural activation especially helpful so far. When Jordan is allocated to a Headspace Medicare clinician, the following steps occur as part of the MOST handover process. In step 1, the MOST clinical team are notified that Jordan has been allocated to a Medicare clinician at his local Headspace centre. In step 2, Jordan's MOST therapist has a conversation with him about the role of MOST in supporting his face-to-face care at Headspace. In step 3, Jordan's MOST therapist sends a summary to Jordan and his Medicare clinician, summarising Jordan's activity on the MOST platform to date. And in step 4, Jordan's Medicare clinician can request a call with Jordan's MOST therapist to discuss how they might collaborate to best support Jordan moving forwards. This slide provides an overview of the central roles provided by the Medicare clinician and the MOST therapist in supporting the young person. On the side of the Medicare clinician at the local Headspace centre, they will be directly responsible for the clinical care of the young person, including face-to-face and in the online environment with support from the MOST therapist and others in the MOST team. They'll be managing the young person's therapy plan and setting the direction for the MOST online support team in collaboration with the young person. On the side of the MOST therapist will lead the online therapy for the young person in collaboration with the Medicare clinician and of course the young person. The MOST therapist will tailor the MOST therapeutic content, promote engagement and ensure safety online. They'll also foster continuity, intensity and personalisation of care. Together, they'll aim for a collaborative clinical relationship with shared governance. Moving back to Jordan, let's imagine Jordan's Headspace Medicare clinician is thinking about how they might integrate MOST into their clinical work with Jordan. We'll take a look at the different levels of usage available. The first is the light use category. These Headspace Medicare clinicians are eager to enhance their young person's access to digital support, but might not be quite ready to integrate this with their usual care. They value the summary report and occasionally check in about MOST in session with their young people. They also check the MOST dashboard to gain insight into specific young people at times of disengagement or difficulty building rapport. Some example tasks include encouraging the young person to sign up to MOST and utilise its additional supports, check in about MOST in session and encourage use, occasionally view MOST with their young person during sessions, occasionally checking the MOST dashboard prior to sessions with the young person, and finally responding to email communications from the MOST team as needed. The next level up would involve moderate use of MOST. These Headspace Medicare clinicians are eager to improve outcomes for young people through integration of face-to-face and digital supports. They use the MOST dashboard prior to sessions to gain new insight into their young people and actively encourage and guide their young people in making full use of MOST supports. Example tasks include actively encouraging young people to sign up to MOST and utilise its additional supports, checking the MOST dashboard prior to each session to understand what the young person has done and found helpful since their last session, checking in about MOST during sessions and encouraging its use, occasionally setting therapy from the MOST platform as homework, when indicated, actively supporting their young people to reach out to the MOST support team in sessions to initiate additional support, for example, the tailoring of a therapy journey. And finally, occasionally adding notes to the clinical log, communicating support needs or preferences of a young person to the MOST clinical team. In the case of a heavy use example, these headspace Medicare clinicians are ready to embrace full integration of digital and face-to-face treatment. They actively use all features of the clinician interface to enhance their treatment, drawing in additional human support from the MOST team only when required. Example tasks here include proactively signing their young people up and using onboarding as a valuable means of getting to know each young person, tailoring MOST therapy and setting homework in sessions to mirror face-to-face treatment plans, check a young person's activity on MOST prior to each session, and spending some time in sessions reflecting on any new insights or helpful strategies gained by a young person, activating direct messaging with the young person, and using this occasionally between or even in place of sessions to support certain young people, and occasionally adding notes to the clinical log on the platform to link in additional between session support from the MOST clinical team. Let's take a look at discharge planning. Jordan has made some significant treatment gains. His mood has improved and he's feeling more confident in managing his stress levels as a result of a combination of face-to-face support with his Medicare clinician and between session support from MOST. Let's imagine Jordan and his Medicare clinician have decided to have 2 more sessions before Jordan is formally discharged from Headspace and referred back to his referring GP. In these final sessions, Jordan and his Medicare clinician might review Jordan's progress on MOST, discuss the role of MOST in supporting Jordan post-discharge in line with his wellbeing goals, and after these final 2 sessions, the Medicare clinician might even add a note to hand over to the MOST clinical team what the discharge plan involves. Post-discharge, we can imagine that Jordan has now been discharged from his local Headspace centre, but he's decided with his Medicare clinician and with his MOST therapist that he'd like to remain engaged with MOST as a part of his ongoing support. This might involve Jordan receiving a scheduled call or live chat session with his MOST therapist to develop a discharge support plan, Jordan continuing to work on therapy journeys and clinician recommended homework, him receiving a fortnightly direct message from his MOST therapist, as well as continuing to engage with peer support and vocational support if that's needed for him. In terms of disengaging with MOST, Jordan should be able to continue receiving support from MOST in an ongoing way. He will receive a text message if he's inactive on MOST for 4 weeks, and he can then log on to stay active with the MOST platform. His account will be deactivated and privacy protected after 6 weeks of inactivity on the site. But he can still reactivate his account ID if he wants to after this time by logging on and completing a brief questionnaire. You might wonder, what if a young person tells you MOST isn't really working properly for them? There's a really important feedback function on the MOST platform itself, where a young person can, for instance, report a bug, which tells the MOST team about problems that they've experienced with the platform itself, or even suggest improvements or new features that might be cool for the young person to experience on the site. In terms of support and feedback options for you, where might you go with questions or if you need help with MOST? You should have a MOST champion at your local centre who you can consult with about any issues that arise. You can also consult with the clinical implementation facilitator working on the Headspace MOST rollout. We're working up some frequently asked question worksheets as well as other Orygen Digital support resources that should answer plenty of your questions as well. Where to pass on feedback or suggestions about MOST? Again, there's a feedback function on the platform, not only for young people, but for Headspace clinicians as well. If this isn't working, then consider talking to your MOST champion or getting in touch with the clinical implementation facilitator to flag any feedback or suggestions about the MOST platform. Thanks for your time.